The febrile mind, culture, technology, art, and flippancy. Black, everyone in black. A Stalinist wet dream come true, and the end of growth. Written by Richard F. Adams and read by an AI of him. There is a moment on a London platform just before the train arrives when you can see the crowd perfectly. Hundreds of men in near identical black coats, faces lit by the pale glow of their phones, standing in patient silence along the yellow line. It's an oddly peaceful sight, also a slightly alarming one, because what you're looking at isn't just a commute. It's what happens when thousands of people spend years learning how not to stand out. Conformity is deeply corrosive to productivity, GDP growth, and the effective functioning of free markets because it suppresses the very traits, individuality, risk-taking, and divergent thinking that drive innovation and competitive advantage. When society pressures everyone to think and behave the same way, it narrows the range of ideas, discourages experimentation, and punishes deviation from the status quo, which in turn chills entrepreneurship and technological progress. In a truly working free market system, the diversity of preferences, strategies, and business models generates constant creative disruption, but uniformity reduces this dynamic ecosystem to a static, homogenized landscape where innovation slows, productivity plateaus, and long-term economic growth falters. Everyone wears black, okay? It's occasionally charcoal or navy pretending to be black, or even khaki color, but always black gilet or puffer coat or jacket, proper commuter black. Coats, trousers, trainers that used to be white once but have surrendered to the trend. Now it's women wearing the white ones. It's like a totalitarian dream come true. As a kid, we used to be told to laugh at the Maoist Chinese, all wearing their grey outfits. But who's laughing now? The difference? We chose it, they didn't. The black clothing army are mostly over 35, the age where the face starts settling into whatever expression it plans to keep for the rest of the working week, possibly the rest of the decade. Their hair has started the descent through their head from the scalp to the ears and nose. Already the lines are there, screen lines, mortgage lines, the faint creases of men who've spent 20 years pretending meetings matter. They position themselves for the train doors like chess players. Nothing dramatic, obviously. This is London. The aggression is polite. A small shuffle forward, a strategic lean, someone checking their phone while quietly advancing half a step. Then on the return journey, it happens again in reverse. Everyone standing 3 minutes before the train arrives, packed around the doors as if they're preparing for an emergency evacuation from normality. I'm fairly sure they all have middlebrow jobs, the sort with titles that sound faintly managerial but vague enough that nobody outside the company could explain what they do. Senior something, lead something, roles that involve moving text on slides slightly to the left. Watching them reminds me of Ford Cortinas in the 70s and 80s, and yes, that dates me. The Cortina was basically the same car every time, but there were tiny status upgrades, a slightly different badge, a bit more chrome, maybe electric windows if you'd really made it. Fleet managers love that sort of thing. Enough variation for the regional manager to feel superior to the sales rep. Same car though, just different trim, and that's this train platform. The coats are identical, but the labels are slightly different. The trainers are neutral, but one bloke's cost 50 quid more. Another has the haircut that suggests a barber with a booking system. Otherwise, they look hollow, sheep-like. And in a way, the trains are basically sheepdogs. Big metal sheepdogs gathering the flock and moving them wherever the city wants them. City in the morning, suburbs in the evening, back and forth. London commuters are probably the most homogeneous group of people I've ever seen. And the funny thing is how they react to me. They look at the way I dress as if I'm a minor public spectacle, a curiosity, and you can almost hear the thought process behind their eyes. He must be something, he must do something. Because obviously, nobody who is just a normal person would risk looking slightly different. Some of them don't believe me when I tell them what I've done, where I've been, the things I've built, lost, started again, and yet somehow I'm not famous. That's the bit they struggle with. Different people must be famous, otherwise, why would they bother? But no, I'm just me, and that's the problem. Not with me, with them. The assumption that difference requires explanation, that if you haven't submitted to the uniform, the black coat, the careful trainers, the curated blankness, then you must be performing, seeking attention, trying too hard, or you must be somebody, because nobody who is truly nobody would dare stand out. Ordinariness, they've decided, is the default state of a human being. Anything else needs justification. I've watched this for years now. Different cities, different platforms, same pattern. And the interesting thing isn't the sameness. Sameness is easy. Sameness requires almost no effort. What's interesting is the relief, the visible comfort of a man who has successfully blended in. You can see it in the shoulders, the quiet satisfaction of knowing you won't be noticed. In evolutionary biology, there's a word for this: crypsis, the ability of an organism to avoid detection by blending into its surroundings. Moths that look like bark, or fish that mirror the seabed. And here, on a platform out on the outer London urban rim, 1,000 middle-aged men who have evolved to look almost exactly like commuters. The difference is that moths don't choose to look like bark. I sometimes wonder what it costs them, not the coat. The coat's cheap enough now. Fast fashion has democratized corporate conformity quite efficiently. No, the real cost is the accumulated surrenders. The morning 20 years ago when someone made a slightly cutting remark about a shirt and the shirt quietly disappeared forever. The idea in a meeting that was met with that particular kind of silence, the one that teaches you not to have ideas like that again, the hobby that faded away because it didn't fit the version of the person you were becoming. The opinion swallowed or the laugh suppressed. The road not taken because it looked suspiciously like the road taken by someone without a pension. You don't become hollow all at once, it happens slowly, with a series of small, reasonable adjustments, each one sensible at the time. Add them together over 30 years, and you can end up as someone the 19-year-old version of you wouldn't recognize. I'm not romanticizing 19. 19 is often an idiot, but 19 had the right instinct. 19 believed there was a self-worth protecting and finding. That was worth risking something for. The real tragedy of the platform isn't misery. Most of these men are probably perfectly fine. The tragedy is that the question has stopped being asked. Are you actually yourself, or did you quietly edit yourself out? I dress the way I dress because it's an extension of how I think. The two things are connected. When I get dressed, I'm making a small declaration about what I find interesting, what I find beautiful, what I think is worth noticing. Some days that declaration is louder, and some days it's barely there, but it's always mine. I'm not doing it to be looked at. Half the time I find being looked at slightly annoying. But dressing in a way that has nothing to do with me at all would feel like telling a lie before I've even had coffee, and that seems like a bad start to the day. Still, they stare. I've had blokes on this very platform ask what I do, with genuine confusion, as though the answer might explain the coat, or the boots, or whatever detail triggered their curiosity that morning. And when I tell them about the things I've done, the projects, the detours, the failed experiments, they look at me with a mixture of disbelief and mild pity, as if that sort of life must be exhausting, or I must be mad. Their version, the mortgage, the job title, the company car, appears to them not just preferable, but obviously correct. My failure to choose it must therefore be either a mistake or a performance. But it isn't either. It's just a different answer to the same question everyone eventually faces. What are you going to do with the fact that you're alive? Philosophers have worried about this for centuries. Kierkegaard apparently called it the crowd, and I don't think he trusted crowds. Not because they're stupid, although he suspected that too, but because the crowd offers something extremely attractive, and that's escape. If you join the crowd, you don't have to carry the burden of being an individual. You don't have to decide who you are. The crowd decides for you. You simply move with it, comfortable, untroubled. The cost, he said, is everything, because the crowd is where the self goes to die quietly, preferably with a pension. Nietzsche later called it the herd, which is basically the same metaphor. Humans apparently require sheep imagery to understand themselves. His point was that herd values have a clever trick. They make conformity look virtuous. Blend in and it's humility, or stand out and suddenly you're a bit much or difficult. The herd's greatest achievement is convincing everyone that mediocrity is actually the moral high ground. I'm not saying the men on this train platform are mediocre. I'm saying the system that produced them is deeply suspicious of anything that can't be ranked, graded, measured, and placed neatly inside a corporate hierarchy. Sartre had a simpler way of putting it. Existence precedes essence, which means you are making yourself constantly through every decision, every action, every morning you get dressed. There is no finished self waiting inside you to be discovered. There's only the self you're producing right now. And if everything you do is aimed at disappearing, blending in, becoming indistinguishable from the platform around you, then what you are producing is an absence, a person-shaped hole in the world. Eventually the train arrives, as it always does. Well, mostly. The doors open, the flock moves, and the only question that has ever really mattered remains exactly the same. Is the person standing on that platform actually there, present, particular, themselves? Because it doesn't start with a dramatic reinvention, just a small, daily, surprisingly difficult decision, refusing to disappear. The train arrives and the doors open. The platform empties in a slow, orderly flow of black coats and neutral trainers, everyone carried in the same direction by the same piece of machinery. It's an impressive system when you think about it. Thousands of people moving exactly where they're supposed to go. The only part the system can't answer is the simplest one. Whether the person stepping onto that train has spent the last 20 years building a life or quietly disappearing into it.